Yes! Hell yeah! Hey, come on, baby! Come on! Yes! Come on! Yes!
What's up everyone, it's me Oi, and today I'm bringing an updated guide for my Whirlwind Hota Earthquakes build. Thanks to the changes to Mantle and due to some popular demand, after the build was able to clear 150, becoming the first Whirlwind build to ever clear 150, I believe, and becoming the 7th clear in the world for Barbarian, as of the time I'm recording the video. Now, this video is gonna focus on the pit pushing variant of the build, right? We're gonna be covering that, but I will have a follow-up video, and I'm gonna link it down below whenever it's done, about the build I used to speed farm, which is insanely fast, but it's quite different from the build we have right now. In this video, I'm gonna be covering the skill and skill trees that we have on the build, the Paragon we use and the glyphs, the gear we use, aspects, everything, the jewels and occult gems we're using, the witch powers, and lastly, the Mercenaries. The links to everything and timestamps are gonna be down below. Now, starting off with our skills. First of all, expertise to end attacks, we all know this, it's always the same. But now, when it comes to skills, we'll obviously be running Whirlwind, and we're gonna be putting points in the passive for the Fury generation, which is part of the reason we use Whirlwind, and into Furious Whirlwind, so we have some bleed on the build. We'll also be running Hota to both proc overpower hits to get the buff for 40%, and to actually give us the explosions the build has. We also gonna be running 2 shouts here. It's gonna be challenging shout with the passive to get some extra HP. This is gonna allow us to live in the pit, and war cry for the extra damage, of course. We'll also be running stomp to reduce the cooldown of our ultimate, and generating a couple of fury and earthquakes, which we do not mind. Lastly, we're gonna be using the ultimate Wrath of the Berserker. This is a ton of damage. It's gonna be the way we actually have berserking uptime, part of the ways we have berserking uptime and unstoppable on the build, and we're just gonna be stacking it for tons of damage. Obviously, the last one, we can't really be running Wrath of the Berserker without unconstrained, right? It's part of the deal. Now, when it comes to our Paragon, I think this is very basic. Most of the Earthquakes builds run very similar Paragons. We're gonna be running the first 3, of course, with Ire there, socketed there. The second board, we're gonna be running Decimator with the Rumble glyph there. Of course, you can be running an Earthquake build without the rumbling, right? Now, next board, you can see this here, but this comes last. Next board is gonna be Blood Rage, of course, you can't miss this, with the Revenge glyph socketed here. If you notice, back in the skill tree, we have 1 point on Thorns. It's to proc this, right? We can go here. You can see we have 1 point here on Outburst to actually get the Thorns to be able to proc this. This will give us a lot of damage. It's giving us a lot of strength and damage while berserking, which helps a lot capping berserking damage. Next board is going to be Force of Nature, of course. This is the bread and butter for anything Earthquake. And we're going to be running Marshall here, both for the cooldown of the shout, and also because all the magic nodes here are close damage. Really great, really cool. And lastly, the board we're going to be running is Weapon Master. This gives us a lot of damage, of course. 30% increased damage to injured and healthy enemies. This is basically a 50% damage multi to the build, 15%, sorry. And it also gives us a much better way to generate fury, allowing us to not have any fury problems on the build by swapping between Whirlwind and Hota. I'll take this time to also remind you that your Whirlwind is gonna be bound to your slashing weapon, and your Hota is of course gonna be on your two-handed mace. Now, for the next thing, we're gonna go back to our character. It's gonna be about our gear. First of all, the only mythic unique you're going to be running on the build is going to be Starless. Starless is a lot of damage. It also gives us a lot of resource cost reduction, which allows the build to flow so much better. And a lot of crit chance, which we love, right? Now, The other two uniques we're gonna be running is gonna be, of course, an Ugly Bastard. It just gives us a lot of Wrath of the Berserker cooldown, which we need. Aggressive Resistance, which is a really nice mitigation, layer that we have to actually reduce the damage on pit, which is gonna be super high. And Mantle of the Mountain Fury, which of course, finally, right, we're actually running the proper unique for the Earthquake build. This just feels so good to go around exploding earthquakes, and it's a really good chest, right? Now, for the rest of the build, we're gonna go over the aspects first. First of all, Earthquake's aspect, just double 120 multipliers to the build. To simplify this single aspect gives you over 1000 damage multi to the build, right? That's insane, right? The next one is gonna be the other Earthquake one. This just gives us 120. I say just, but that's a lot for an aspect. 120 damage multi and converts our Earthquake's damage to fire. We don't really care that much. The other one, it's gonna be Executioners. This is another one that's giving us an insane amount of damage. It says 945 there, sorry. 945, right? In the pit, damn, voice cracks. In the pit is actually gonna be a lot more. I'll explain why in a second. The rest of the aspects we're gonna be running, really important here, Earth Striker. This is how we're gonna be proccing the overpower for our Hota to give us all the buffs, not only from Hota, but also from Warpath and the second bonus from Decimator. It's really important. This is also the reason we have, again, our Whirlwind set to our slashing weapon and the Hota to our 200 bludgeoning weapon, the 200 mace. Really important to not mess that up, so you can actually get a lot more damage, because we're also running Battle Med aspect. This gives us a lot of damage and makes sure our berserking is capped off by just swapping weapons. This is also another reason we want to be swapping weapons, a lot of damage, right? Lastly, on our rings, we're gonna have, not lastly actually, on our rings we're gonna have Shout. This by itself just makes our Shout almost have 100% uptime whenever we are killing packs, and on some bosses with some luck we can get it quite low, sometimes almost no cooldown as well, depending on the bosses and the RNG you get. Now lastly, we're also going to be running the Met aspect. It's a new aspect right now that both gives ranks to your ultimate skills, which reduces the Wrath of the Berserker cooldown, which we appreciate, and gives you a 30% damage multi to our, to our damage when you use an ultimate though. Now, most of you might be thinking right now, why the hell are you not running Fists of Fate? I've done the calculations. It's very close. It's extremely close, actually. I'll be trying the Fists of Fate later on, because I do, as you can see here, where is it? Here we have it. I do have a really sick Fists of Fate here. I paid like 2 levers and a nice eyeball or something for this. But we got it. I still need to properly masterwork it and everything, but I'll be trying it out, since I still wanted to for another build that I'm gonna make. But yeah. Now, when it comes to tempers, closed everything. When it comes to tempers, there's a couple of things you need to keep in mind here. On the full 100 glyphs of the build, you're gonna want 4 rolls of close damage on your gear. We have one here, and one here. You're gonna want 4 rolls. They don't need to be perfect, but you're gonna need 4 of them to actually hit the cap for our, what's it called again? I'm sorry. I'm not good with names. For our Force of Nature, right? We're gonna need to hit the cap there. And we need on 4 pistas, remember, 2-handed weapons count twice. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Really important, not mess that up. And we're gonna need damage while berserking on 1 piece of gear. Currently I have it on my weapon here, and if you saw it earlier, I have on this. The reason is it's perfect roll, and I was considering swapping it at the time for Fists of Fate. So It's just like, I'm not gonna be rolling it. It's just perfect, just looks good, it's whatever, right? Could do a bit more damage, but you know, looks are more important, right? But yeah, everything else, you're gonna be getting ground stomp cooldown on your pants, really important here, and you're gonna be getting earthquake size on all your defensive pieces. When it comes to weapons, we're gonna want one weapon with earthquake duration, ideally one of your two-handed. You could potentially run only half of this earthquake's duration. I like to run this full value, simply because it allows you to group up enemies, to leash enemies much easier, because your earthquakes stay for a long ass time, making sure that enemies don't leash back. This is one of the reasons I run this. The damage calculations, it's a bit better to only run like a 70 roll, but the damage difference is not that big, and the quality of life it gives you, not allowing enemies to leash away from you during pits, I think it's really important for consistency. Now, you're gonna want a pair of weapons, or one two-handed weapon with chance for earthquakes to cast twice. This is really important, right? And lastly, one of the other weapons is gonna have heavy hitter ranks. All of these stats need to be fully masterworked. They increase your damage exponentially, right? It's a lot of damage. You need to masterwork this as fast as you can. Lastly, on your amulet and ring, you're gonna want Wrath of the Berserker cooldown to get that Wrath of the Berserker as low as possible. So you drop it, you don't constantly drop it, because if you can cast Wrath of the Berserker before the cooldown goes away, you actually are able to keep the stacks. The stacks you get whenever you consume Fury, right? You're actually able to keep them as long as you don't let it go off cooldown, right? Now, to actually achieve this, you might want to get ground stomp here instead of damage while Wrath of Berserker is active, right? You could make an argument that this is better, that gives you more damage, considering this build can stack up Wrath of the Berserker quite fast. I prefer this. Some people might prefer the other way. It's up to you, really. And then the rest of the damage rolled is gonna be Wrath of the Berserker all over your gear. Now, when it comes to our jewels, we're gonna be running strength on every single armor piece, of course. We're gonna be running critical damage on our weapons, just the best roll. And when it comes to our runes, it's gonna be Pok Zek here. Now, the reason we're running Pok instead of running something like Seer or something else, which would be better, is that Seer does not work with weapon swap. I don't know why right now, it is bugged, same with Moni and maybe one or two other runes. It just bugs out whenever you do weapon swapping. Pok is not ideal, but it's the only thing that actually works for the build, I believe. I would love to have a better option, but it is just what we have. And Zik just makes our cooldown on Wrath of the Berserker way better, especially in boss. Even without boss is nice because it gives you a pull for the enemies, right? But yeah. We're also gonna have on the other runes, it's gonna be Igni and Tech. This is how we're gonna be proccing our earthquakes. We're just gonna be spamming Igni constantly, right? Spamming Whirlwind and Hota. This is just gonna be proccing constantly, no matter what. Now, for our occult gem, we're actually gonna be running Friend of the Bog here. We're also gonna be running, I'm not sure, give me a second. They know the name of things.
You have been busy.
I'm really bad with name of stuff, I'm sorry. We're gonna be running, what is it? Not Dust and Stone, it's gonna be Moonlight Ward for the defenses. Again, Pit really freaking hurts, and this is just gonna make our life much easier. And we're gonna be running Angering Void for another grouping mechanism for the build. As you can see here, Angering Void here. Now, lastly, in the build, not lastly actually, I need to go over a couple of things. First of all, I forgot to mention Exploiter on the boots, just incredible damage multi. You're gonna be stomping everywhere. They're gonna be unstoppable all the time, just nice, right? Anyway, going on to the witch powers, right? The important part of the build this season. First of all, the biggest one, Soul Harvest. This is currently give you like what, 64% extra strength. It's insane. Like, it's the reason, like, you can see me in the beginning of my pit runs, just going around, collecting enemies, not using a single cooldown after I get it. I used it right at the beginning of the map because I do not hit any enemies, but after that I don't cast a single one. It's because of Soul Harvest. I don't know if it's a bug. I think it's a bug, but I don't know if getting 64 is luckily intended. But the bug right now is if you cast an ability and you only hit like 10 enemies, if you then group enemies and cast it again, you'll get the stack is gonna say 64, but your actual strength will not go up. They say they are gonna fix this. Hopefully it's fixed soon, because grouping enemies in the beginning of the dungeon, I lost so many dungeons because I'm just running around, wasting all my pots, and eventually I just die because I'm killing 3 packs of enemies with 9 elites fucking bashing at me constantly, and I have no pots. It's really hard, right? Another one I want to mention here, another hero for the build, X of Whispers. Now, you might look at this and be like, yeah, that gives you, that gives you a nice 45. That's a nice 45 source, right? That allows you to not have to run 45 on other places of the build. But that's not the only reason we run it. X of Whispers, if you can read right there, it glances all negative effects. This also applies to the Shadow Boss debuff. You know the 3 debuffs you get on Pit? After the 3rd you just take immense damage. Well, this glances it, which makes Pit boss fights almost a joke. So yeah, really important. Now, our last growth and decay is gonna be the cycle. This just gives you incredible sustain. It helps a lot with staying alive. This deals a nice amount of damage. Also, it's really nice to make sure enemies don't leash, right? It's just constant damage on the enemies. It's really cool. Now, our way to keep vulnerable uptime on the build. This is the reason that we take vulnerable on our weapons, that fixes on our weapons, because we literally have 100% uptime on vulnerable because of Shaken Soul, right? Combine this with an aura or anything that deals a lot of damage, like our cycle, and you just have constant vulnerable uptime. You don't have to worry about it. For our aura, we're gonna be running Aura of Misfortune. This helps us a lot, especially in the beginning, gathering all the enemies. This is basically, you can look at it as kind of 30% damage reduction. It's basically more like 30% dodge, but it helps a lot, and it also gives you a good amount of movement speed, which, really helps once you're actually fighting for every second on Pit. Lastly, we're gonna have Aura Specialization. This is 35% increased critical damage, but it's not a plus, it's actually a multiplier. I don't know why they lie like this. And it also increases the aura size of our Aura of Misfortune, making sure any enemy near us is actually debuffed by it, which, is a nice plus to the build. Now, lastly, and probably not the most important, actually, they're kind of important, we're gonna have our Mercenaries. Right here is gonna be our pick of choice for a couple of reasons. First of all, resists. We struggle a lot to get resists on the build, and this is just gonna help us out tremendously, right? Now, he also has a couple of abilities that help us a lot. This one, Ground Slam, I believe it makes a debuff and heals you, right? It's really nice. It helps a lot with sustain, which we struggle a bit. And the last one here, Bastion. Basically, a lot of times, especially in that first pack, you're just taking a crap ton of damage. And whenever he puts this Bastion down, he does push enemies away, but you get that juicy 90% damage reduction. It helps a lot for you not to die on those bits. Whenever you see him popping this, get the fuck in there. So, just make your life like 1/10 of what you have to worry about, basically. Right? But now, For the, you know, support thing, whatever it's called, I'm just running Field of Languish. This is just 20% damage reduction every now and again. It's not the best. You can pretty much run either Hota or Whirlwind here. Whichever is fine, you're going to be casting them all the time, right? Whatever you prefer, it's fine. Now, for the, you know, last closing thought for the build. This build, again, you're going to be wanting to swap the weapons constantly. You're not just Whirlwinding or Hota, you're going to be constantly swapping between both skills. This is how the build works for you to get maximum damage and do a lot of damage. Another thing I want to point out, if you can avoid it, you don't want to proc your earthquakes right away. For some reason, our Mantle actually does the full damage of the earthquake. I believe it implies that it does whatever damage it's left on the earthquake, but it actually does the full damage of the earthquake. So if you can let your earthquake stick a bit, do a bit of damage, it's actually ideal, and you explode them later after like 4 seconds or something. That's actually ideal. That's why sometimes you see me spinning around, not trying to avoid hitting the center of the enemies, because that's where most of the earthquakes are, right? Especially the ones that gonna deal a lot of damage to most of the enemies. That's the reason why, right? Now, I believe that's it for the build. I might add an FAQ section at the end if I remember something here. But yeah, if you have any questions that I didn't cover in the video, make sure to let me know down below. I'll be looking at the comments. I'll be answering everyone I can. You know, there's not a lot of you, I believe, but you know, I'll be answering everyone there. I'll also have a build guide down below, fully updated to the build I'm running. Again, if you want, you can swap Fists of Fate in. It doesn't really change the build a whole lot. You might have to move these resists to the ring or something. But regardless, it's really easy to put it in if you want to play with it. If you want to see those juicy, massive, like 100 trillion damage or something, right? If you want to see those numbers, go for it. They are basically almost the same. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully you have fun with the build. The build works both in pit and outside of pit. Again, I do recommend going with a speed leveling version. Not speed leveling, a speed farming version that I'm going to be making a video in 1 or 2 days, hopefully. But yeah, thanks for watching and see you next time.